Chapter 15. Max. I stood in the foyer waiting for the love of my life. My heart skipped a beat, and I placed my palm over my chest in a nervous gesture. I asked, "Is this me?" I've never had a reaction like this before. What I thought was love was infatuation and control, but now I'm experiencing the entirety or my feelings. I need her, I desire her. I love her like I've never before. I always thought I couldn't fall this deep in love with anyone, but finally I have. It took losing Alex and the loss of everything I thought made me who I am, to understand there was more to feel, beside the desire for sex with this beautiful woman. I thought I had to control her, get her to submit to me to make me whole. Now I'm whole again just because she's in my presence, or will be in a few seconds. Never had I found appreciation for anyone as I'd discovered now. I had to lose everything to bring me back to my rational senses after wallowing in arrogance and my asinine dominant behavior. Alex was never a woman to take for granted, and I did, and devalue her along the way. I'd done too many things in our relationship, and won by not being there when she needed me. Like everything else in my life, when I didn't want to give up my companies to be with her, I delegated being a father and husband to Jonas. I was the one who drove her into a sadist's arms just to survive. And now I take complete responsibility for my actions, instead of blaming everyone except myself. I am to blame for all of this, I whispered into the night. I have to change, or I will lose Alex forever. My hands quivered. I glanced down and then up, looking out at the car. I watched as Jonas strode in the direction of the Jeep, opened the door, and Alex stepped out wearing a pair of tight jeans and a white shirt. I watched her silhouette by the moonlight, and she's as pretty as ever. Lean, strutting with her head held high, radiating confidence no matter what the circumstances she'd found herself in. How amazing, I thought. How could she go through what I could never imagine, and still be as regal as when I first met her? How could I be so stupid? Had been another thought spinning through my mind. My body shivered, thinking about the nights we were together. She looked hot in those tight jeans, and I wanted to fuck her now. Crawl between her legs and never come up for air. Yet that wouldn't match who I am now. I chuckled when I remembered her standing over me as I knelt naked before her on my knees, and there she was wearing knee-high black boots, seductive, breathtaking, with both of us naked with a whip in her hands. My cock rose at the thought, and I felt pre-cum leak from the slit in my cock. I had to place my hand on it when she and Jonas neared the door and entrance. I couldn't control my body, therefore, I turned around and headed back to the chair and swiveled it away from them, hoping I could control myself. "This is Alex," I heard Jonas say, standing behind me. "She's going to work here for no more than a month, because she has obligations, and she did it out of a favor to me." I knew the obligations Jonas spoke of. To be my wife and the mother to our children. I played along with Jonas because I had too much to lose. Standing, I turned, and it was amazing how I felt about Alex after the time we'd been apart. It was like meeting her for the first time. She looked remarkable and spectacular, and I wanted to tell her how beautiful she had become, but I didn't want to scare her off. She didn't know it was me. "It's nice meeting you, Alex." We stared at each other, and I felt the attraction between us immediately. Her voice shaky, and I knew it wasn't because she was nervous. I didn't expect her to be attracted to me this early. I was happy though, and sad at the same time. I wanted her to have missed me, and not think of another man, even if it was me. "Jonas didn't tell me who you were, because I sort of decided to work for you an hour ago." She chuckled nervously. "That's another story, and I know you don't want to hear about it now." For some reason, I let silence come between us. I think I was trying to get used to the idea that the woman I wanted and desired the most was with me. I held out my hand and offered her a non-threatening smile. One she could trust, because after all, she knew nothing about me except what Jonas had told her. And since this was very sudden, Jonas couldn't have told her much. I didn't want to hear about any past revelations, and I knew if Alex told me something it wouldn't be truthful. The truth was too hard to give to a stranger, and now I was a stranger. I cared about being alone with her, and she could share her thoughts then without Jonas hovering about. When I looked down at her hand inside mine, oh shit, I forgot to take off my wedding band. Jonas didn't tell me you were married, she observed. She narrowed her eyes. Perhaps she'd recognized it. It's been a while since she'd seen it, because I rarely wore it. It was a plain platinum one. I blinked, and my eyes swung over to Jonas. Help me out, I telegraphed with my eyes. His wife died, Jonas said. I didn't want him to mention something of that nature, but since I couldn't come up with a better excuse, I had to go with Jonas's explanation. Nevertheless, death. Couldn't he have come up with something better? I grimaced. But what? I guess Jonas did the best he could, because I couldn't think of a thing. I had been blinded by having Alex so close to me that the fact rendered me speechless. Jonas had said the first thing that came to his mind. He was always like that, and now it may have finally paid off, because I stood there like a deer in headlights, and that had to be a first for me. Therefore, I went along and added to the narrative. Yes. My wife died last year, and I've been trying to cope with that ever since. That wasn't exactly a lie. And I had killed her. Not in a physical sense, but mentally I had been responsible for the death of our relationship, and our life as we knew it. There were so many things I wanted to tell her and didn't, I confessed. There were places I wanted to take her, but it never happened, and for that I'm beyond grief-stricken. I don't know if I'll ever get over her, and I know I could never marry again. She glanced up at me, tears welling in my eyes. That was a first because I'm not a man who cries easily, but thinking about the time I'd lost by not having Alex with me had me drowning in my own self-pity. Don't worry. You'll find someone who you can love as much as your wife. I know she will never be able to take her place, but it can happen. She looked away for a second, and I suspected she believed her own words. I will never find a woman like her, and I don't want another her. If I can't have her now with me, and it's not possible anymore, all I can do is to try to live without her. Alex spoke, and I didn't expect her to say what she did. I know how you feel. I lost my husband too, but not like you. Sometimes it's worse knowing that they're around, and you can't be with them, not even to touch them, Alex said. I didn't like where the conversation was going, and I glanced over at Jonas, and he'd turned his back to us. Then Jonas strode to the kitchen from the great room and opened the fridge. Do you want something to eat or drink, Alex? No, she said, looking at me. Our eyes locked, and I was glad she didn't mention my eyes after noticing them, and I continued the conversation but changed it to take her mind away from what she'd seen. I moved here to get away from everything, Alex. She strolled away from me and stood next to Jonas, who was drinking a bottled water, as he peered out of the glass doors and into the open yard. The sky was clear, and the light surrounding the land captured animals traipsing through. I know what you mean, she said. This is a great place, mister. She turned and said, I don't know your name. I don't know who I'm working for, and I trust Jonas will vouch for you. I'll be here alone, and Jonas will be gone. Zachary Bauer. He's okay, Alex. I've known him more years than I can count. We were friends since grade school. Jonas chuckled, and I raised an eyebrow. You're in safe hands. And please don't call me mister. I don't want any formalities between us, Alex. Jonas, can you show me where I'm to sleep tonight? And I didn't bring any clothes with me. She turned to me. It's a long story, Zachary. After I cook breakfast, I'd like to shop for some clothes. Do you want an allowance? I asked. Look inside the closet. There are pajamas I've never worn. You can wear those for tonight. Do I have a uniform allowance? Yes, of course, if you think you need it. I'm your maid, and I have to clean the place. You're going to need cleaning supplies and food. Although it doesn't look dirty here, she said, walking into the kitchen area to open the cabinets. There is so much food for one person, and not the right kind. You need to stay healthy. Do you mind if I drive you around to get the supplies you need? I asked. I never got a chance to do that with my wife, and she'd complained I never did anything domestic with her. She complained I worked all the time. In truth, I did. Well, your wife and I would have gotten along great. I'd said some of the same things to my husband. I'm afraid, Zachary, you are too much like my husband. Which makes it easy for us to get along, I guess. I knew what to do to keep my husband happy, but she stopped there, because I guessed it didn't seem proper to reveal our secrets, and Alex had tried to maintain propriety for the sake of the children. However, being married to and in the Blackstone family, it had proven difficult, what with me and Jonas asking more of her, and the amount of loathing I'd incurred because of business practices, among other things. I raised an eyebrow. You have to tell me about what happened to your marriage. Maybe if someone comes into my life one day, then I'll be better prepared and a better husband than I'd been before. I wished my husband had been eager to change, she didn't continue. She didn't have to, because I knew what had torn us apart. It was me. Well, Zachary, with your handsome face you'll have a hard time running any woman away. It's not always the face that keeps a woman, she interrupted with her explanation, to my surprise and dismay. It's the body, and you've got a great one, and the face helps, and if you're not a womanizer, then a woman would be more than happy to have you. Her eyes brightened and she bit her bottom lip, probably waiting to hear what I'd say next. Are you flirting with me, Alex? No. She shook her head. I don't flirt. I'm still in love with my husband. Jonas walked between us and glared at me. Now that you've gotten everything out of the way, can I show Alex to her room before anything serious happens between you two? I was taken aback. Well, where did that come from? I thought Jonas wanted us to get together, but now he's acting as if I'm doing something wrong. Jonas took Alex's arm and turned her in the direction of the guest bedroom, and he opened the door, and then closed it after a few words, which were impossible to hear because he spoke low and soft. When I glanced up, Jonas was standing near my chair. Sit, Jonas, you make me nervous. He plopped down in the chair and turned to me. Jonas twirled his fingers. Say it, Jonas. You're moving too fast. You have to give her time. Didn't you hear her talking about you? Have you forgotten that you're no longer Max? You have a different face, and you have to get her to fall in love with it, and not think about what Max wants at this time. You being here will remind her. Jonas interrupted me at a perfect moment, because I didn't want to travel down that familiar road of telling him that he's the one who's around when things go wrong between Alex and me. I'd blamed him for so many things until it became second nature that all my problems fell on him, when in fact, I knew the truth. It had been me all along. That's why I'm leaving tonight. I'm going to catch a plane, and I'll be home with the children when they wake in the morning. I trust that you won't fuck things up, Max, and have her running from you because you asked her to have sex with you tomorrow. I guess it's too soon? I raised an eyebrow, half joking and full on serious. What do you think? Put yourself in her place. Alex has been through a lot with that last bastard, and not to mention this face was the cause of her problems, but with that face you have now you are a stranger, and she's suspicious of strange men as well, and men with handsome faces. Give her time to get used to you. Court her first, buy her something, and not anything that's outrageously expensive. No cars or diamond rings. Maybe candy and flowers for starters. I stared at Jonas. I'd never known he was the candy and flowers type, but I'm sure he knew what to do, and it was sad that I didn't know what would make my Alex fall for me. Something simple. Take your time and don't rush the courtship. You should have done this years ago when you first met her, but it's never too soon to begin. When Jonas strode out with his duffel bag and a few clothes, I had time to think about what he'd said to me. It made so much sense. I guess my little brother was thinking after all. I guess he's all grown up and doesn't need me as much as I need him now. Chapter 16. Alex. I woke early, grabbed a robe from Zachary's closet, and I thumbed through his clothes to get an idea of the type of man I'd planned to work for. In this closet there were all kinds of running wear, high-end sneakers and tees which were very expensive. I stood for a second and thought about what he'd have stashed in the master bedroom closet. That would give me some indication of his personality. You could tell by the clothes and the shoes he wore whether he had been a man who didn't care about his attire. These warm-up suits only said he liked working out and maybe jogging. However, the sneakers and running clothes appeared to be new, and had never been touched as if they were purchased yesterday. I stood too long thinking about this man. Was he a gangster and had to relocate to Texas? That made sense, because since I've known Jonas, he's only been around the sketchy type like in New York, and everyone knew there were plenty of these characters to go around, and Jonas had known most of them. I closed the closet because I didn't want to know any more about him. Thinking he could be in the mafia, and a man of means, said a lot about him, and why his wife probably died. Maybe it was from a broken heart. I could see that. That handsome face and all the women hanging around, and the kept women holed up in their apartments waiting until he came around to fuck them. He'd probably left his wife alone to take care of his business, or had affairs with many women, and returned home once a month or once a year, and she'd spent her nights tossing in bed wondering if he was with another woman or dead. My imagination had gotten away from me, but the growl of my stomach brought me back to my reality. I strolled through the large house, finding my way to the kitchen, thinking of food. I had to tell myself, this doesn't concern me. Do your job, get the money, and get the hell out. Do not get involved with another of Jonas's sketchy friends. But he's so handsome. I can see how a woman could fall for his gorgeous face and lies. I'd gone through some of the same things, I thought, but from what I knew of Max, he'd never been a womanizer. However, I had my children and Jonas to keep me company through some of my toughest, loneliest times. I tiptoed in the direction of the kitchen, but when I passed Zachary's room, the door was ajar and I peeped in for a second. There he was, tossing and mumbling in his sleep, kicking off the covers. I backed up. I'll wash his bed sheets and peep in his closet, then I could get an idea of who I'm dealing with. Since I didn't want to wake Zach for him to think I was intruding, I kept walking after I eased the door closed and headed for the kitchen. The fridge and pantry was full, and I chose what I thought Max would eat since they were similar in build. I never had a chance to cook for Max, because we were hardly alone with cooks and maids and drivers. It felt great now not to have people around. I would get used to that. There was a silence here that I came to appreciate. That made me happiest, and my children when they were younger. When I didn't have Max because he was too busy to give us attention, I had my children doting on me. I was their everything the way they are mine. Jonas had said Zachary didn't want anyone around, but Jonas thought he needed company, and I needed the money. He was right about me, but I wasn't sure what Zachary wanted or needed. Looking into the fridge, I pulled out a steak and placed it on the grill nearby. Zach had a muscular build, and impressive if I may say so. He didn't appear to be a vegetarian, and so I decided on a steak and scrambled eggs, instead of fruit and yogurt which I'd planned on having myself. Then I could ease Zach into eating a healthier meal. Reaching for the fruit bowl, one found some oranges and cut some into slices and strawberries. Sprinkled a few grapes into the bowls for me and Zach, took the New York cut off the grill and dropped it into a plate, along with the scrambled eggs with an English muffin. That didn't take long. For some reason I felt a presence, and turned to see Zach staring at me with this sexy grin, wearing a white robe. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to take you for breakfast. Why? I'm the help, not. I didn't continue. That would have been a wonderful gesture, if we were on different levels. I wasn't his girlfriend, I was his employee. Sit at the table and I'll have everything ready in a few seconds, I instructed. I'd like to sit at the counter and watch you. This is something new for me. Why don't you sit with me and eat your breakfast? Then he stared at me. You really should eat more. You look like you're a size 6. I've been smaller. But I like, and he didn't continue when I placed the plate in front of him and we locked eyes. I hope Jonas isn't trying to match me with him. What is Jonas thinking? Zach must have seen how my expression changed when he tried to tell me what he liked. I wasn't interested in what he liked in a woman. I just wanted to do my job and get home. I've never interviewed you. He must meant he wanted to interrogate me. I have to be careful not to give away anything, because I don't want to mess this up. Jonas knows this man and he's decent, I guess. At least I think he is so far. The reason Jonas introduced me to Christian was because I needed money, and it was supposed to be a business arrangement, but I behaved like a fool and wanted to hurt Max because he'd hurt me, and I consented to marry Christian. I fell for his innocent-looking eyes, his young immature face, and because he was a few years younger than me and rich as hell, I said, what the hell, I'll do it. I thought I could handle him. Big surprise, he was a wolf in sheep's clothing, and I turned out to be the sheep. I brought my yogurt with me when I sat, and peered into Zach's eyes. He had eyes like Max, and then there was a feeling that shook me to my core. I'd never felt this way, but once, and I thought I'd never feel that way for a man again. My hands trembled and heat coursed through me, and my breathing accelerated. Oh fuck. Oh fuck. I thought. I can't do this. I can't handle this, and then there's the matter of Max. He will never let me go, and I don't want to get him involved in my crazy life. Do you have children? I had to think quickly, but it was best to let him know since I was working for him. Yes, I have 3. 2 boys and a girl. That's right, Alex, let him know there's someone waiting for you. Just in case he has a sympathetic bone in his body, and he's thinking about something sinister. But why Jonas put me in a perilously situation? He wouldn't. But he had in the past, but Jonas has changed since our brief encounter on that yacht. If anything, he'd match me with himself, before he'd see me with another man besides Max. We have a lot in common. Those words took me out of my thoughts. I slanted my head waiting for him to explain. I have 2 boys and 1 girl also. Really? He seemed surprised that I'd say that. But I have a husband. I thought you said you were divorced. I am, but you don't know my husband. Didn't you say he was like me? I think I said your wife was like me. There's no one like my husband. I was careful not to call Max's name. Perhaps he knew Max because he knew Jonas. But then few people saw them together, and they thought there was only one Blackstone when they were twins and identical at that. Zach looked down at his steak and cut it, and brought the piece to his mouth. You're a great cook. It was nothing. The grill did everything. You are a beautiful woman. Are you going to dispute that? I don't see myself the way men do. I stood. Mister. Don't call me mister. It sets off something in my psyche, and... Zachary. I came here to clean and cook. Not fill in for your dead wife. If we can leave it at that and not get personal, then I'll stay as long as you want, but if you're going to flirt with me, then we'll have to end this soon. I didn't mean a word I said. I needed him, as much as he appeared to need a woman. But why did it have to be me? I think someone said that you covet what is close to you. I reached for his plate with the half-eaten steak, and emptied it in the garbage. Turning to him, I gave a stern glare. Eat your fruit. You shouldn't eat red meat all the time, and when I looked in the freezer it appeared you have a whole cow in there. From now on you're going to eat healthy. Turning around and sneaking a peek at him to see if he was going to fire me, I felt relieved when he murmured, "Bossy," and his mouth curled up to the side with a sneaky, sexy grin. This man reminded me so much of Max with his gestures, and I knew I would have a hard time leaving him, because he was everything I wished Max had been. He was available, and didn't question me about my life, and how I came into his life. I glanced over at him. I have to make a call, and I'll be back to clear away the dishes. Now eat your fruit, and here's the coffee. After pouring it into his cup, with him looking up at me making me nervous, I trudged away and used his landline to make a call. I didn't want to do that, but I had no choice because I didn't have an iPhone. Chapter 17. Alex. Jonas, I don't think I can do this. And you're not here to guide me. I think you forgot one thing, Alex. I've never guided you on anything. You took the lead and guided me. Remember? Well, I need you now. Where are you? Waiting in line for a rental. I didn't call ahead. In a few hours I'll be home, and I can talk to you then. But I trust you to make the right decision. I haven't made a right decision in years. Did you see what a mess I made of your life and mine? It wasn't your fault, Alex. Don't blame yourself. It was Max's fault, and he wants to make it up to you if you come home. I want you home too. I can't stop thinking about. Don't think about it, because that will never happen again. Nevertheless, it's a memory I don't want to lose. It was the worst thing that could happen to you, but it was the best. I couldn't let him complete that sentence, because it scared me to death to think that I'd put myself in a position where I'd have to worry and think about what I did with Jonas for a lifetime. I could never get that out of my head, and I wouldn't feed his fantasy by encouraging him. It was awful being in the situation that traumatized us, and would cause all kinds of trouble for us with Max. I didn't know how Jonas felt, and I didn't want to hear how beautiful the moment was, because it felt as if it was hell with me, and I'd betrayed Max and everything I thought about myself. The guilt was profound, and there was no way I could end it. I had to plow through it and hope I survived. I have to go, Jonas. Kiss my children, and tell Max I'm not sure it's a good thing for us to get back together. And I hit the red button, and sat at the end of the bed staring at the phone. I need a phone and privacy, I thought, as I strolled back to the kitchen. The lights were dim, and the music was low and soft. I tried to ignore Zach staring out and singing along with the tune. When he heard the dishwasher, he turned and stared at me. Do you dance? Yes, but it's been a long time. I think I just graduated from college, got a job, and hung out at a club and bar where people my age were dancing. I don't do that anymore because I have children. I mean, I had children before my husband. There I go again, giving away too much information. What's up with this guy where I want to confess things to him? Familiarity, I thought, and it happened too soon. I looked from across the bar. Are you a lawyer? No, not lately. Why? Because it's something about you that makes me want to confess to you. I don't know what it is, but you ask one question and I tell you more than I want to. I just met you, and I may never see you again. Then why not tell me about yourself? How you came to know Jonas and where you came from, and where you're going? Because, as I said, I just met you, and I don't trust anyone anymore. You don't trust anyone? Why is that? There you go again. I don't trust anyone, because I've trusted too many people. Men to be exact, and I've found nothing but heartache. Zach strode closer to me in the kitchen and looked at me. Such a beautiful young woman not to trust anyone. Was it your husband? I bet it was your husband who betrayed you. Not in the way you're thinking. My husband never spent much time with me because he was off adding to his fortunes. You'd think he'd have enough money. He probably did, but maybe it was he thought once he gave up everything he'd worked for, you wouldn't see him as he'd first presented himself to you. You know, rich and successful. Maybe he thought you'd fall out of love with him, because he wasn't the same person. What, are you a psychologist? No. You would have to guess, because I'm not going to tell you. It will take you a long time to guess, and I hope not soon, because you might leave me just when I'm falling in love with you. I turned and headed for my room, and to call Jonas again, and ask him to come back to Texas and bring me some money because I can't do this. When he reached for my arm after I made a few steps and turned me around to face him, he said, "Can't you see that I'm joking?" I didn't see him as a man who jokes. He had this starry-eyed look filled with sexual desire. That's how I saw him. A man who needed something, and it had to do with sex and a woman he desired. When was the last time you had companionship with another woman? Since I met my wife, I've never had a desire for anyone but. He didn't complete that sentence, and it was a good thing he didn't. Look, if we're going to go to the store and I'm going to buy clothes for myself and some food for you that doesn't have 4 hoofs, then I need to get dressed. I was roaming around after you went to sleep, and I washed my clothing. There was cigarette smoke on them. He wasn't surprised to learn I was roaming around the house. He appeared to be good with that. He was a man who appeared not to have much to hide. I suspect he had isolated himself because of his pain of losing his wife. It won't take long to dress. I've had my shower, and by the smell of your aftershave and soap, you've taken yours. Zach raised an eyebrow. Shared too much. Instead of pushing him away, I'm showing I have interest in him. That wasn't my intentions, or was it? I don't know what I want now. I find I'm craving the attention of a gorgeous man who reminds me of Max. This can't be good, but he's nothing like Max, and I like that part of him. I like the part where he's showing me attention, and he likes to flirt first. When I first met Max, I fell in love with him, but he only showed his desire for me in the bedroom, and so I took that because I wanted and needed him. I'd had a baby for him, and he never knew because I didn't tell him until later, because I didn't see him after that for a long time. He'd been too busy with his hotels and businesses, but I resented him and wanted to teach him a lesson, and that's how I fell into his world of BDSM with him and Jonas. The problem I was having with Zach was he smelled too much like Max. There was one thing about Max that I loved, and it had to do with his intoxicating scent. Each time he was around me, I became aroused, and I apparently aroused him too because his cock was always hard. He'd nibble at my ear, and kiss the nape of my neck, and my body would respond the way it's doing now, and I knew I had to get away from Zach before he'd have me tied up and we'd be deciding on a safe word. Perhaps he wasn't like Max in bed, then I'd have to teach him how to satisfy me, and who knows what it would take to satisfy him. But whatever it would be, if I consented and made up my mind that I wanted to experiment with him, I'd do my best to please him. What am I thinking? I threw the robe to the side and stepped out of Zach's pajamas, dressed, and met him looking gorgeous waiting for me in the foyer. Are you ready for me to take you shopping for food and clothing? Food for me and clothes for you. You did say you need a uniform? I googled a shop and they have just the maid uniform for you. I didn't like the look in his eyes, but I would let this day play out. We strolled out together and into a rental he drove. It was a high-end car, which led me to believe he had resources I hadn't fully understood. Coupled with the large ranch home and his black Maserati, he had serious money. He opened the door and I stepped in. Thank you, I said. When he climbed under the wheel, he said, I've always wanted to have a personal relationship like this with my wife, but never had a chance. I hope you don't mind if I practice with you. Maybe the next woman I meet, I'll know how to treat her, that is if you're not the next woman. And he pulled out of his driveway and headed to the interstate.